Good morning. Sunday, July 25th, 2021. Let's set our intention, make aspirations by saying the four measurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. So I think like in a week, it'll be a year since we started doing this, which is pretty wild. Very cool, right? And kind of covered a lot of ground in a year. I think especially in the last few weeks, working with the 9 purifying breaths, which we will do before we start meditating today, and Tonglen, which we're really starting to connect to more subtle body energetic practices. And I don't know, if you're new to these things, they may seem like very esoteric, new agey, pseudoscience-y stuff, but like Victoria says, we're much more than just meat bags. There's something else going on. And if Garchen Rinpoche said Buddha is not the name of a man, it's the name of your mind. If Buddha nature is our essence and our essential nature and our nature of our mind, that's a lot more than a bag of flesh and blood and bones and stuff. So the other thing I just want to talk about is, a lot of you have come here for different reasons, all of them valid and all of them perfectly fine. And when we started this class, it was just really secular meditation, calm abiding meditation, focusing on the breath and using visualizations. And we've gotten into a little bit different techniques where mind watching mind and things like that. But, we moved from secular meditation into basic Dharma, and Buddhism. And really, you can't really talk about Buddhism without talking about becoming free from delusion. When you think of the word delusion, what do you think of? You think of kind of a hallucination. A delusion is a belief or a view that you're convinced is correct, but is not correct. A misinterpretation of reality and stuff. The Dharma, really, the point of it is not necessarily, Buddhism always kind of, I think people have a idea that it's about becoming this very kind and peaceful and loving person, which there is an aspect of that, of course, and there is ethical discipline that's a method and part of this practice and necessary, because we have to purify this delusion. What is the delusion? The delusion is the view that there's a separate I from the other and from others. And what Buddhism says is that the true view, right, the ultimate nature of reality, the ultimate truth, is that there is no duality, there is no separation, and that is just how we perceive the world and our interaction with others and our interaction between ourselves and the world. The interface between these things is this very narrow slice of subjective reality. And that we work on the view in Buddhism, which is interdependence, interconnectedness, impermanence, and those things. But interdependence, interconnectedness on such a massive scale that there's nothing outside of that. We can have the view that we are separate as much as we want, but it's always a deluded view. that view, as Purified, this is a really good teaching. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, we've read some of his teachings many times here. It is spelled, I think they pronounce it actually Dingo Khyentse, but D-I-L-G-O, capital K-H-Y-E-N-T-S-E Rinpoche. This is wonderful. This is from Lama Surya Das USA Instagram site. Lama Surya Das, you know, was a guest here. Kind enough to come and teach us. But here's the quote. The qualities of Buddhahood pervade all beings, just as oil pervades a sesame seed. These qualities have always been there, complete, never changing, as the naturally radiant expression of the absolute nature. In that sense, it can be said that all the qualities of nirvana are completely present throughout samsara, the realm of suffering and delusion as well. What is the relationship between the phenomena of delusion and those of enlightenment? Consider the clouds in the sky. When clouds form, they do so thanks to the sky. Yet the sky never changes. Clouds manifest within it. Then when they are dispersed by the wind, the sky reappears just as it has always been. In the same way, no phenomena, even those of samsara, are ever relinquished by the enlightened nature of nirvana. No phenomena are ever relinquished by the enlightened nature of nirvana. They manifest within that enlightened nature, but do not modify it in any way. Are the phenomena of enlightenment, therefore, also permeated by the phenomena of delusion? So is that pure Buddha nature affected by the delusion? No, because the absolute nature never changes and it cannot be affected by any amount of delusion. So we can say that the phenomena of delusion are never other than the absolute nature, yet the absolute nature does not contain the phenomena of delusion. The Buddha nature is present in delusion, but delusion is not present in the Buddha nature. So when we work on and meditate on this view and expanding this view, naturally our interactions with others and with the world will follow suit in a way. And we can't expect things to happen overnight. And what does this mean? What would it mean to realize this view and embody it and become, our, the way this Buddhist view become the way we interact with the world and interface with the world? What would that mean? Well, that would be enlightenment when that's completely realized. But on the path, which is a gradual path, we slowly expand our view. Why do we meditate? If mind is Buddha, we have to learn how to work with our mind, right? Instead of just letting thoughts dominate the mind and thoughts just that stream of thought one after the other just take our mind all these places. So we have to learn that the thoughts are not the essential nature, that there's something underneath and something inherent in us that is our true nature. And the more we start to taste that, the more we start to sit in it a bit or touch it, the more the view can start to change. This can take a long time. But what's the alternative? Let's do the 9 purifying breaths, right? So we start the blue channel, which is in the middle, right? The right side, however you're defining what's the right side for you, is the white channel in me. I use the white channel on the right, which deals with anger. The red on the left, which deals with attachment, and the middle deals with ignorance. Those are the negative emotions that correspond to those channels. But let's take the Vajra fist that we've learned. Breathe in into the right channel. And breathe out. And when we breathe out, think of all those afflictions connected to those negative emotions leaving the body. And on the in-breath, all the enlightened qualities. The opposite of anger, which means what? Anger and hatred, the opposite being love and patience and things. And it doesn't matter which one you do first. You can do the outside one or the inside, but the attention goes to that channel. Switching hands, going to the left channel, which is the red, which is attachment, which could be lust, which could be greed, which could be indifference sometimes, and the opposite being generosity, kindness. I'm going to the central channel, the blue channel, which deals with ignorance. Ignorance in terms of not understanding the true nature of reality, the view that we were talking about. That's the blue channel. When you breathe in, you can almost breathe in through the two outside channels, the red and the white, and then breathe out through the blue. So take it in through the outside channels, which are on both sides, and then release through the blue. On the last breath, we'll hold. Imagine those three channels meeting around the navel, and then we're going to eject. Instead of the nostrils, we're going to imagine we eject it out of the crown chakra, right? Imagine our consciousness merging with space, mind merging with space, spaciousness of sky and space. Let's take that into 11 minutes of meditation. Make it 13 minutes of meditation. when you become aware of the fact that you're thinking, either go back to the breath, focus on where the breath is moving in and out of your nostrils, right above your lid, your attention there, or we use that visualization technique of the clear, limitless, unstained blue sky, and the clouds being, the sky being the mind, representing the mind, the clouds representing the thoughts which arise from the sky, dissolve back into it. And you can visualize the thought that you have dissolving back into that clarity of mind. The third technique, which is a little harder, and usually it takes a little more experience, but we've been doing this a year now, is just by the fact of becoming aware of the thought, using mind to look at mind, using mind to look at the fact that the mind is thinking. Just let it be and almost sink into that nature of mind, that clarity of nature of mind that recognizes the thought. That's a little tougher. But if you start to play with that concept of mind observing mind, it can, take root and can be very effective. It's almost like becoming aware of the fact that you're thinking is the trigger to let it go at the same time. It's almost like the antidote is the poison, or the poison is the antidote, or vice versa, or something like that. You get what I'm saying, I'm sure. You're very smart. Not that thoughts are poison necessarily, although emotions can be. That's for sure. But aren't emotions just like, when we talk about clouds being in the sky being the thought, right? Sky being the mind, cloud being the thought. What's emotion is really like the storm instead of a cloud, like a more magnified, a more intensive version of a thought. Emotions are not permanent, just like thoughts are not. You can go back and forth between these techniques, if the mind looking at mind is a little too hard or too nebulous at this point, go back to the breath, use the sky. Doesn't matter at this point. You should notice by now that every time you do kind of recognize the thought and apply the technique, when the thought does dissipate, what's left is usually very calm and centered and potent. You should recognize kind of a potentiality there, an energetic almost potentiality. Because Buddha nature is also referred to sometimes as the unborn sphere of phenomena, limitless potentiality. Dharmakaya. Okay, excellent. Um, Talking about this view, it may seem very difficult, very confusing as well, right? Talking about delusion, we're not saying like what we see is false, but it's what we see, what we've habituated how we see ourselves in relation to the others in the universe and the world is diluted because it's so subjective and so conditioned and so narrow. Like this view of interdependence, interconnectedness that we're talking about really is very much supported by modern, physics and science in that way. When they talk about really the nature of reality and the ultimate nature of reality, and the Buddha and the enlightened people, enlightened beings that have, either taught or been here, and what makes them enlightened is recognizing that view and realizing that view. So embodying that. If you look at your hand under an electron microscope, you're going to see that it's not really a hand, right? It's a bunch of particles or waves or electrons or whatever the most powerful microscope can see. So which one's real? Is the hand real? Is it the electrons? They're both point of views. We think of this as finite and real, right? And in essence, in essential nature is not necessarily what we think it is. How will this change, adopting or learning about this view or implementing it in our perception? How will this change how we behave and interact with the world? That's the question, right? That's a really big question. That's why we practice, right? And also why we learn the Eightfold Path, why there are certain, ethics connected to Buddhism. Because if your mind is consumed by attachment and negative emotions, constant basis, there's no room to start to connect and interact in another way that's more in sync or harmony with the true nature of reality, if you will. But, don't let this overwhelm you. We still have to do the work, and we still have to meditate, and we still have to cultivate compassion. Okay, we can talk a little bit. I'm curious what age you got into Buddhism. I got into Buddhism about 15 years ago, so around 40. Was it gradual? It was gradual because I looked into a lot of different spiritual paths. Basically because I was in a place of dissatisfaction. Although, I bought my first Buddhist book when I was 19 years old, the Diamond Sutra, and I couldn't make heads or tails out of it, but, there was some kind of karmic connection to it. Thank you for running these meditation sessions. I haven't been doing this very long. One thing I struggle with during long meditations is fighting the urge to fall asleep. One thing you could do is when you start to feel drowsy is raise the angle of your gaze, right? Raise the angle of your eyesight. And vice versa. If you feel a little distracted or agitated, you could lower it. Raising the gaze often makes a small shift in our attention, and can snap us out of that drowsiness. I don't know. It's hard to say, looking at the conditions of where you meditate, how, it's a little bit abstract for me to address. Is there something in the room? Is there something in the setting? Is there something in your posture? I'm not really sure. What time do you do it? Are you doing it late at night? I don't know. If you want to elaborate, maybe I can help. Dharmakaya is, that's a good question. Isabel's asking, oh no, Claudio's asking, we mentioned Dharmakaya. That's a really, I should read something precise rather than just. When we talk about Buddha nature, right? That's connected to Dharmakaya, the unborn sphere phenomena, limitless potentiality. It's also, the connected to emptiness, and that reality is empty of inherent existence. It is that ultimate view of interdependence, interconnectedness. It's also called the body of truth. The ultimate body, the absolute, it is without form, substance, or concept of any sort, including existence and non-existence. Vajrayana, the Dharmakaya is nothing whatever, but everything arises from it. A really great Tibetan Buddhist teacher named Tsoknyi Rinpoche, Tsoknyi, Tsoknyi Rinpoche. Once someone asked him do Buddhists believe in God? And he said, they believe in the nature of God, not the concept of God. So the concept of God would be the idea of this, creator, omniscient, omnipotent being. But the nature of God being that kind of sense of oneness and sense of interconnectedness and interdependence. So think of Dharmakaya as, the ultimate nature of where all things spring from and everything comes from. It's a big concept. There's, you know, Claudia, I would suggest you Google Dharmakaya and Tibetan Buddhist lamas and do some research into some lamas that could really explain this in detail, because I certainly can't. It's just a little beyond me. I have a little bit of an idea of what it is and can talk about it a little. It's a very good topic, and there's lamas that can really elaborate in very effective ways. What do you recommend to do to be more mindful with breathing in day-to-day stress? I recommend being more mindful with breathing in day-to-day stress. That's what I recommend. So when you, I don't mean to be sarcastic. So when you, the key is to start to become aware, right? Become aware of not just thoughts, but emotions, you know, when we start getting caught up, right? So yesterday we were online at the supermarket, and a woman in front of us was buying 2 bags of candy, which was probably $11 or something, and paying by check. And it took an awful long amount of time. And then the cashier had to bring it to the manager, and the woman messed up the date on the check, and it had, you know, and it, maybe in the past, or, you know, you'd be impatient, be angry, this person's, you know, causing me to wait. But it's like, if you can just be aware. And there was something very vulnerable and sweet about this person. And she knew she was taking up a lot of time, and she was uncomfortable with the fact that she was taking up a lot of time from other people. But she needed to do this. It was important to her. She was buying candy. Maybe she was buying it for her children, or a gift for whatever it was, you know? So if you can become aware that there's a bigger picture, it's not just about your inconvenience, and you can cultivate some patience in the moment. And she apologized, and there was something kind of sweet that happened between the cashier, the manager, the person, and the person buying with the check, and the other people online. Some connection that happened, just because the people involved were not caught up in the usual impatience and defense of self. This is my time that you're interfering with because you're not paying with cash, whatever it is, you know? So the practice of meditation hopefully starts us working with thoughts in a way we could become more mindful of our thought process, of our emotional process, and how we respond to situations, so we can respond in a maybe different way, in a way that's in a bit more harmony with this view that we're talking about of non-duality, interdependence. Do you explore different types of meditation techniques? Did you explore? Well, actually, before practicing this one, I'm actually not giving you one technique. There's actually 3, and they're kind of different. You know, the focusing on the breath and the visualization of the clouds in the sky is more kind of calm, abiding type of meditation. And the mind looking at mind is really a Dzogchen, is a much more, I hate using the word advanced, but it's not something, you know, that's what Lama Surya Das was teaching us. So if you're really interested in that, go watch the Lama Surya Das on our YouTube channel, because he really explains it wonderfully. I didn't really explore other meditations before being a Buddhist. What do you do when you're consumed with body discomfort, itching, position becoming painful, etc.? If you have an itch, you can scratch it. You don't have to ignore the fact that your body is, you know, you're sitting in this posture, and if like you feel a tension, you can certainly adjust. I mean, that's what I've been taught. You know, it's not about enduring pain, you know. It's perfectly fine to adjust and then settle back. I mean, if it becomes, you know, 13 minutes of constant adjusting and uncomfortableness, then maybe you should adjust your posture. Maybe you need a chair. Maybe you're doing something, you know. It's okay to be in a chair if that's what you're only what you're capable of, you know. If you have an itch, you scratch it. And then, you know, it's almost like you're treating the body discomfort or the itch or something like the thought. You become aware of it, and then you let it go. You make that little adjustment, and then you let it go. What made you want to start the path of spirituality? I think I addressed that before. Is it good to say a mantra when you meditate? You know, mantra for me was given to me by my teacher and by teachers, and I kind of want to leave it at that. If you make a connection to a Buddhist teacher, you know, or you know, I don't really want to be one to give mantra or something like that, but I've certainly used mantra and not so much meditation. Yes, meditation, but more, you know, certain. If you start working with a teacher, you'll have certain practices even beyond meditation that may implement mantra recitation and stuff. Did you ever get to meet with Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys? I did. I knew him a little bit. He was a Buddhist. He was married to a Tibetan woman, actually, and had he knew the Dalai Lama and was a practitioner. Died of cancer way too young. I never spoke to him about what made him change his beliefs, you know, but I did like him a lot. He was a good dude. Do you have any ideas on how one could stay mindful, apply Dharma principles to the dating scene? Oh, that's a really good question. Wow. Nina, that's a great question. That's a tough one. I mean, I don't know about applying Dharma principles, but staying mindful, that's a good idea. And this can be very tricky, right? Because dating and relationships, especially romantic, love, sexual relationships, that can really get into, that can really tap into some deep emotional things and psychological things, right? So mindfulness can be very, you know, important. Sometimes our relationships, we seek them out based on habitual tendencies that have been, you know, related to our childhood and maybe even past lives or who knows. So, you know, ideas on how one can stay mindful is like, I think by doing this, the practice that we do, you know, by becoming a meditator, you know, and really making a daily practice of looking at the mind, not just on the cushion. We should, it's almost like we use like situations where emotion arises, sticky thoughts, you know, sticky thoughts, I mean, like things that get under our skin habitually, you know what I mean? Like for some people, it's like waiting online, the person in front, you know, taking out, you know, a bag of change to pay for a $4, you know, cup of coffee, you know, those things can tip people off, you know, set you off and get you angry and things like that. When those sticky emotions, and they could be other things, it could be diluted, you know, attachment to like a romantic person, you know, a possibility who pushes buttons by maybe saying something undercutting to you. But there's something that triggers us into thinking that's intimacy because we've been habituated to it for whatever reason in our past. The key is to recognize that the emotion arises. And I think the only way you could begin that recognition is through meditation. And not only on the cushion, but start to bring the principles of meditation, looking at the mind looking at the mind, becoming aware of thinking into our daily life. Does that make sense, Nina? I don't know. Have you traveled to Tibet? I have not traveled to Tibet. I have been to Nepal, where, especially Kathmandu, Budhanath section of Kathmandu, where the Great Stupa is a lot of Tibetan refugees and a lot of monasteries where Tibetan monks and lamas are teaching. And in the surrounding areas of Kathmandu, there's a lot of Buddhist holy sites. It was a pretty amazing place to be. What ways has meditation affected your craft, whether it be acting or music? I don't really know. That's a really good question. I'm asked that a lot. I don't really know. I know how it's affected my, life. And I don't think you can really separate those things. Lot of delusion, Nina says, referring back to the dating question. Yeah, about a delusion. By the way, I was supposed to turn the camera this way and be in a chair. There's no subliminal things about this pink bed behind me. It's just my boys are visiting. They're asleep in the other room. I was supposed to do this way to the chair and forgot, and there's this giant pink bed behind me, but do not read anything into that. I just wasn't thinking properly. How do we maintain this higher consciousness frequency while relating with non-spiritual people? I want to influence others without it being like I'm telling them what to do. Good idea, because no one wants to be told what to do at all. I don't think you should tell them what to do. I think it's more about you becoming aware of how you want to interact with the world. That's the best influence, People who've known you for a long time may start to see a difference. They'll probably at first start to think you're being, pretentious and egotistical, but they may start to see a change, Yeah. So the best influence is just by being a practitioner and I don't know. They may not see any difference, and it may not change the way they behave to you. But there's this saying. It's like, I think it was a Native American saying or something. It's like, I don't know it exactly, but it's something to the effect of walking on the earth is going to hurt your feet, right? But you can't put leather across the earth, but you can put leather on your feet, right? Does that make sense? Do you use crystals? I don't use crystals. I don't know anything about crystals. When I do healing of people, loved one, neutral, and a difficult one, I think you're talking about Tonglen. It happens to me that I start to work on one person and another comes in visually somehow, so I can work on both. I was wondering, what does that mean? I don't know what it means, but it may be, that somehow your mind is telling you that this person you want to do healing for. I think it's fine. I wouldn't, I think if they're coming into your mind visually somehow, and you can apply Tonglen, I think there's probably a reason why, they're coming into your inner vision or whatever. Tanya Fox, I want to say thank you. Wonderful to be here. It's wonderful for me to be here too. I'm learning so much, so am I. And my meditation practice is deepening because of what I'm learning here. I hope mine is, I'm not sure. Your real life examples and stories from your life really help put it all in perspective. I really appreciate your time and kindness for doing this. Well, I do it for selfish reasons because it helps my practice. Can you explain your beads? So beads, this is mala, these are, so when you do mantra recitation, you count each bead as a mantra. There's 108. Sometimes you'll see counters. A lot of Tibetans, you'll see the counters. They do the Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the Chenrezig mantra, the Buddha of compassion, and they accumulate millions throughout their life, 100 million. There's a certain term they use for that, But to me, it's a reminder, I like to walk with them when I'm outside, and you're not kind of supposed to really show that you have this because it's like making a display, but it really reminds me of practice. So I don't know, at the risk of showing this, I do hold them sometimes just to remind myself to practice. They're like a Post-it, a reminder of advice on trauma-based fear. Can we cope with body responses, numbness, heart rate, increasing That's trauma-based fear. You're talking about anxiety. I always say that really needs to be addressed in a therapeutic environment with a professional. First, and meditation as an adjunct to that. How do you sustain consistency with meditation? I'm a kinesthetic person guide. Yeah, that's good, but it's not always possible. I love these sessions on Sunday. I just have zero discipline to incorporate it daily without a guide. I think you should start with really short daily sessions, like 1 minute, and see if you can find the discipline to do that. 1 minute meditation sessions every day on your own without a guide. Thank you. Every time you give this meditation session, I'm witnessing myself worry much less. I used to react to things I couldn't control. Now I can breathe and apply Tonglen. Thank you. Thank you, Michael and Nick. I appreciate our time together. I've been really errant about posting the past classes. Nick's going to get very angry with me. Sorry, Nick. I have to find the time to post all the last few weeks, but I will. All right. I think we've covered everybody. Last questions, anybody? Or we'll dedicate and wrap it up for today. Thank you. Let me see. Do you have anything else? Excellent. Okay, let's dedicate the merit from today's session for the benefit of all beings. This dedication, what you're really setting an intention, you're benefiting all beings because you know you're not separate from all beings. So by this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Nick. Solidio, for his kindness and generosity. We'll see you next week.